Hi, everyone. I am Angela Haupt. I'm the managing editor of health here at US News, and I am totally thrilled to be here today with Mayim Bialik, who you might know played a neuroscientist on The Big Bang Theory. What you might not realize is that she is also a neuroscientist in real life. She's joining us here today to help celebrate Brain Awareness Week, which is going on right now, and to talk all things brain. Hi, Mayim. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, happy Brain Awareness Week and happy St.
Mhm.
Patrick's Day, I guess.
Yes, and same to you. Oh, and you're wearing the green. It looks
I am.
great. So it has been quite a year, quite a start to the year, quite a day. How are you and how's your brain doing these days?
My brain, it's like I feel like it's a cartoon brain, where like I want like smoke coming out of my ears because it feels like my brain is working so overtime. Um, I think that it's an exceptional time, obviously, in global history for a lot of reasons. And it's an exceptional time in US history. It's been a very no matter what side of the political divide you're on, this is not a political statement. It's been a very confusing year, and as someone who is a neuroscientist, I do tend to think about the impact on our mental health, and that's our brain, and our physical health, and that's our brain. So for me, every day is Brain Awareness Day, but it's especially nice to get to talk about it with you and in this format, because our brains are working differently than they have before, and anticipatory anxiety and fear and the things that come up when there's a global pandemic is something we're all experiencing. Just we may deal with it differently or experience it to different levels.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. So let's go back. Let's start with the fact that you are an actual neuroscientist. I mean, how did this come to be in your life? Was this always a path of study that you saw for yourself? Or, what's the backstory? Because it's not an easy thing to become,
I mean,
obviously.
look, I like to say like nothing's an easy thing to become, and I was an actor in my teen years,
Mhm.
but fell in love with science when I was a teenager. I never thought math and science were for me. I mean, I was always fascinated the way that, young people tend to be about all sorts of things, but I didn't have natural, rapid proficiency with the sciences. And so I assumed just wasn't for me. And it wasn't until I had a one-on-one tutor, a woman, to have a female role model when I was working on the set of Blossom, which was the show I was on when I was a teenager. And working one-on-one with her allowed me to see that it's not that science is not for me. The way that it was taught to me was not for me, but that I was
Oh.
able to learn and to capture these concepts and to want to live as a scientist. And so when Blossom
Hmm.
ended, I was 2 years out of high school. I was 19. I graduated at 17, and I was out of Hollywood pretty much for 12 years. I did my undergraduate degree in neuroscience and Hebrew and Jewish studies. And then I went straight to a PhD program. I got married to someone that I met in calculus class, which is very sweet. And we are divorced now, but we did have two nerdy children together. And I had my first child in grad school. And I essentially typed my thesis laying down breastfeeding and typing with one
Oh my
hand.
gosh.
I took my doctoral hood about 7 or 8 months pregnant. So my kids
Oh
are
my
now
god.
12 and 15. And I taught neuroscience, designed
Wow.
I designed a curriculum for junior high and high school homeschoolers that I taught for about 5 years after getting my
Oh my
degree.
god.
I was home with my children. I did not do a postdoc, or kind of continue on the academia route. I was home with my boys in their formative years, and I returned to acting because I ran out of health insurance.
Oh gosh. Well, that's quite a statement about
Up on
you
The Big
know.
Bang Theory, which is a show that I had never seen before because I was like a nerdy mom and like I didn't watch TV. So,
Oh my gosh.
here we are all these years later. And, while I have not been able to keep up with the neuroscience world and go to conferences and all those things, I see the world as a neuroscientist. I see the world through the lens of science and physics and my understanding of, in particular, neuropsychiatry, which is the field that I essentially worked in for my thesis.
Mm.
My degree was psychoneuroendocrinology for my thesis.
Oh.
I resonate in the world of obsessive compulsive disorder. That was my thesis topic. And kind of all things mental health really come naturally to me because of my line of study. So, like I said, it's kind of brain awareness all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, what's that like for you? I mean, your family and friends, do you kind of get people like asking you questions about brains and mental health? Like, are you the go-to in your life for these kinds of
Here's
questions?
here's the thing about me, and this is why I started a podcast. It's called Mayim Bialik's Breakdown, which is all about mental health. Um,
Yes.
Because yes, I am that person. And I also have a lot of personal experience, for better or worse, with mental health. So people do come to me, but I'm that person that everyone asks literally about anything medical. And I don't know everything medical, but yes, I'm trained in biology and chemistry and biochemistry, and I'm trained in molecular. Like I'm trained in all of these things. So I'm the
Yeah.
person that, like, when my mom is like, "What's this medication they want to put me on?" And even if I don't know what it is, I can help explain it in layperson's terms. I am what's called a science communicator. It's part of my
Yes.
being a teacher. So yes, but I do that for everything. People will be like, "This thing on my toe," and I'll be like, "Let me explain."
Well, you sound like a very useful person to have around. Very convenient. Okay, so here's a question. If you could have everyone, just like the general public, take one brain science class, what would it be? What do you think the masses could really stand to benefit from or to learn more about in this area?
Well, look, my selfish answer as a neuroscientist is I think everyone should take, some sort of introductory course to the brain, but you're asking kind of a more specific and I think playful question, which I appreciate. Um, I think mental health, I think brain health is one of the things that a lot of people don't know about. And and as you know, I've partnered with Nariva, which is a brain supplement, and a lot of the conversation that we choose to engage in, as a society, needs to revolve around the things that we do to continue to support our brains. And I,
Yeah,
I don't just mean with what supplements we take. I mean a holistic approach to that, how we sleep affects our brain. You know,
yeah,
what we talk about, what we think about affects our brain. Our diet does affect our brain, and also the ways that we choose to exercise our brains does
yeah.
actually matter and help. And I think that's kind of, in terms of like brain awareness and being able to talk to people about it. It it's like the most important thing happening in our body is our brain, and it's actually the thing that we don't think about the most, the ways that I think we should. We spend a lot of time like, should I go to the gym, and what should I work out, and like, will my butt look good in these pants, and like all these things. But the fact is, like, the part of us that keeps us going and able to literally interact in healthy and productive ways, that's our brain.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm really interested, how do you tend to your brain? I mean, are there some, kind of brain maintenance tips that you could share for people who maybe have no idea how to go about, thinking about this and taking better care of their brain?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the notion of rest, and I don't just mean sleep, is very important. A lot of people, you're like, oh, you only use 10% of your brain, or whatever percentage is floating around. So you use all of your brain, but yes, a lot of your brain is association cortex. It's pathways that are assembling information from a lot of different places. And what that means is we need space. We need
Mm,
space for our brain to get to do what it does. And when we try and jam pack it with things, it will often start affecting other parts of our body. So that's
yeah,
kind of one thing. And yeah, the notion that you do need to actually get a certain amount of sleep is very important. Eating the right foods does actually impact your brain. The notion of like, you wake up and sometimes you don't feel like eating. It really is the most important meal of the day is breakfast, because you need carbs, you need all that stuff, you need glucose, you need the body and the brain to start working together to have kind of an efficient workload pace.
right.
I do take Nariva, and I've partnered with them to talk about, the importance of, there are certain things that we can do to support our brain in the form of supplements, just like we take a multivitamin, or just like we take protein powder if we're trying to build muscle. So that is something that is important for me. And another thing is keeping our minds active. The Nariva app, which I'm happy to talk about, has games and things that can kind of show how your memory and focus and concentration and those things can shift depending on the other things that you do. I'm a jigsaw puzzle person. I'm a
Oh, are
cross
you?
person. I'm like that kind of person. So all those things also, I mean, it is an organ that does need to be exercised like that. So and yes, I also do, I've taken on meditation. I've found that it
Mm.
like heartburn and anxiety and all sorts of other wonderful side.
Oh.
But meditation is a really good way also to give your brain kind of some breathing space, and be able to function better.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I'm interested. You mentioned diet. We do the best diet rankings here at US News. We're really big on the link how diet affects every other type of health, including the mind. And from what I've read, are you a vegan? Is that right?
I happen to be a vegan, yes.
Yeah. And do you feel like I'm curious, like, is that something do you think benefits your brain health, or do you think that plays a role? Or
Look, for me, the decision to be vegan was, a very long process. I was
Mhm.
a vegetarian starting when I left my parents' home. It's a combination of an ethical and moral and spiritual, belief
Mhm.
system. And yes, there are tremendous tremendous pieces of evidence pointing to the fact that we all need to eat less processed foods, less meats, and less dairies. But obviously, people are going to do what works well for them. For me, the ability to have a diet that feels so in line with my moral and ethical and also physical comfort is important. Most people can't process, for example, dairy.
Yeah.
The notion that humans drink the milk of another animal is actually not something that we're naturally programmed to process. So many people have experienced tremendous health differences just from cutting back on things like dairy and stuff like that. So I think it's important to acknowledge, but it's also important to note that everyone still gets to make their own decisions. And also for me, that is why I take supplements of various kinds,
Yes.
specifically, when we talk about the brain, it's talk about Nariva stuff, but that is why we fill in our diet with other things that supplement us making the best use, of the things
Yes.
that we choose to eat. So I'm not trying to be like a political vegan because I know how people feel about us. But for
Yes.
me, it is the best choice. It's the best choice for my health and my children's health. And our
Mhm.
pediatrician, monitors us closely. So
Yeah. So you mentioned, let's get back to this notion that, mental health is part of brain health. And you mentioned you launched a new podcast. Tell us about that, kind of your inspiration behind launching it and what you hope to do with it and, what you kind of hope to educate people on and talk about through the podcast.
yeah, I started Mayim Bialik's breakdown really during, a year when a lot of us were not able to go out and not able to do things. And I noticed that my mental health really took a hit.
Yeah.
And I was someone who already had a vocabulary for that and experience with that and a therapist that I already was seeing, twice a week
Yeah.
most. So what I noticed though is a lot of people who didn't have that vocabulary or a relationship with someone to support them were really struggling. So my partner Jonathan Cohen and we started this podcast to um, try and explain not like what you should do, but what we've tried, what has worked, what doesn't work, and how we're all in a process of figuring it out. And so we have guests who are experts and experts in their own mental health. And it's been, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of writing and research, but it's very joyful, to get to talk to
Mhm.
people about mental health in a way that's very, very raw and honest, and not just like I'm a celebrity and here's what you should do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Have you had a favorite episode so far or, a conversation that's
Oh,
really just,
wow.
I know that's hard. Maybe like a conversation that's
It's
really
so
just like gotten
hard.
to you?
I'm on this show Call Me Kat, which is on
Mhm.
Fox, and so I've had so far two of our cast members. We've aired their episodes. Leslie Jordan and Cheyenne Jackson. Their episodes were really, really dynamite. Both dealt with addiction and depression and anxiety, but really beautiful personal journeys. And I don't know. We just had Glennon Doyle, who's I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
big deal to me and to so
Yeah.
people. And, I think she's like our highest profile-ish person that like Oprah talks about her and like Gwyneth Paltrow talks about her. And now she spoke to me. So very excited. And I spoke very openly about eating disorders. And so like it was a very, very fun episode, but they've all been really emotional and fun and beautiful. And,
And was that cathartic to you? Especially the eating disorder episode, you spoke about your own experience. Is that something like, did that feel helpful to you just to kind of,
no,
no? Okay.
but it felt helpful to speak my truth. And I don't mean
Yeah.
that in like a hippy dippy kind of way, but if Glennon has been so raw and open about her bulimia and her mental health challenges and being from a blended family and all these things, if she can speak openly about that, it's time for me to speak openly and
Yeah.
more Certainly. And eating disorders is like one of those things. It's not an attractive thing to talk about. It feels very, I feel very exposed. But it's an important episode. And I've heard from so many people that it's helping them. And honestly, for Brain Awareness Week, that's the most that I could hope for, is for people to go to my
Yeah,
breakdown and check it out.
exactly. Yeah, so everyone go online, Spotify, podcast app, download it. Wrapping up, I'm just curious. I mean, you are a mom, so and you have this perspective. Do you have advice for maybe the parents who are tuning in and watching today, on how they can kind of either help their kids start thinking about their brain health, or what they can do to kind of, stay on top of that and make sure that brain health is front of mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say possibly the most annoying thing, but the thing that I do believe to be true: the more we work on ourselves, the better our children will be. Meaning, the more patience we have, the more we understand our triggers, our buttons that they know how to push. Um, the more we can be of service to them and be able to support their brain health and their overall health.
All right. Well, Maya, I'm sure you're super busy. Thank you so much. You have been absolutely delightful to talk
Thank
to.
you.
So
Thanks for
thank
talking
you
about
so
brain.
much.
We also appreciate that as well. It's something that's really changed a lot of how I view brain health. And so we appreciate talking about that as well.
Well, this is super important stuff. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your brain with us. And best of luck, everyone. Go check out the podcast.
Thank you.